Hi, I'm Christian.
And I'm Monika. Hello.
So, thank you for being at our online presentation. And Monika will now share the screen with
Yes,
our
just
slides.
give me a second and I will start the broad view. So, yes.
So, we'll present a paper called Rethinking the Human Body at Work. Next slide, please. And to give you sort of a very brief outline at the start, this is a qualitative case study in which we look at the role of the human body at work. Our setting is a factory, and specifically we looked at the effects of night work. Theoretically, we draw on the work of Karen Barat and the intertwinement or entanglement of body and mind, and the neo-Marxist / labor process theory, which focuses on workers' experience. Our findings group the workers' experience of the body in three basic groups. We'll talk about that for the main part of our presentation. And our main conclusion is that the body is marginalized in much of management discourse and often not reflected very well, but is creeping back in through its materiality and its ties to the social. Next slide, please. So just to give you a very brief review of the literature has engaged with the human body in several different ways. On the one hand, we may see the more normative management theory, and there we have sort of long-standing ideas like the division of body and mind. Think of Taylor's scientific management, in which ox was just an ox doing work, and the management was the head doing the thinking work. We also have the idea that the body is something which can be sold at the market, almost like a commodity, the workforce. More recently, there has been ideas around self-optimization, trends like wellness or Fitbit, wristwatches, and so on, ergonometry, which is about the idea of optimizing the self through the body. More critical approaches have problematized all these ideas. Marx already has problematized that workers have to sell their bodies, and there's blood and sweat and tears involved in that. Later, Foucault has offered some ideas around the human body from the production of docile bodies in disciplinary power to the emergence of human capital and the care of the self, critiquing this neoliberal idea of self-optimization. Feminist and gender approaches have also added to that by showing that powerful discourses are embodied and therefore lead to gendered power structures. Next slide.
Our theoretical perspective now is that we use labor process theory / neo-Marxism, which focuses mostly on workers' experiences that are often marginalized in management discourses. This is partly also because, as Gary tells us, bodily experiences are hard to communicate and thus often remain outside of the political realm. The focus here is also on workers' experiences of structural tensions in capitalist labor and in their daily working lives. And we also draw on Karen Barat, and new materialism, which wants to go or goes beyond the Cartesian body-mind divide. And we want to rethink material, spatial, and temporal dimensions of body or bodies at work in this study. The method and the setting, we went to a steel processing factory, did 53 in-depth interviews with shift workers and some managers. We also did observations at the factory. They are doing 24 hours production, including night shifts. It is a very physically challenging job design, as you might imagine, but we specifically asked about night work and night shifts because it kind of brings the body and bodily experiences to the forefront of our study. This is the structure of our finding section. We will go through it quickly in the next few slides, but just as an overview, our three main themes are bodily experiences, and subthemes are unmediated bodily experiences and mediated bodily experiences in terms of social life impacts. The second main theme is body, extra pay, and labor market. Here we have as a subtheme extra pay as a main motivator, but also trap, and labor market considerations. And the third main theme is health versus money, tensions, and then quitting versus staying. So we go through these points now, as I said, with some slides. Christian?
Thank you. So the first one is sort of setting the base. What's the actual experience, or how do they talk about their experiences? And we grouped it into unmediated and mediated bodily experiences. Now, with unmediated, we of course acknowledge that these are mediated through language. We talk to them about that. But still, it's those bodily experiences really concern the body itself. And we had really a lot of statements. And during night work, sort of the one thing which really captures the overall spirit is night shift is horrible. It's just horrible, because at 2 or 3 in the morning you have a low, you basically are half dead and you nearly sleep standing. And what was interesting is that this is not neatly confined to the time of working. This is also a problem for the days after the work shifts. I cannot sleep maybe 1.5 hours a day. I can't relax in my mind, maybe when I'm awake. But I cannot sleep. You are like a zombie the entire day. You're in a trance or so. So it's really these zombie-like daytimes, which also are an effect of the very challenging night times. Next slide, please. Now, these temporal overlaps are not just from night to day, but also in the long term. A lot of people gave us the idea that you can do a lot of things. A lot of bodily strains, you can cope with them when you're young, but it gets worse when you're old. And that's something which evolves over time. So I sleep maybe 3 hours and wake up. It has become worse with age. By now you're exhausted in the evening when you come to your next shift. So we see this aggravation over time as a strong theme in the unmediated bodily experience. Mediated ones are much more concerning about the social life. A lot of problems revolve about the family. One of the reasons people give for doing night work, for example, is that they want to spend time with their kids during the day. But the problem is they're not really themselves then. So you see more of your kids, but you don't have the energy to do a lot with them. So the physical strain, again, extends beyond the site and the time of work. Another respondent said, I'm just finished. I get up, but I can't do anything. I'm not motivated to do anything. Basically, you wait till the next shift, night shift starts. So it's really, it's put a strong strain also on their social lives, but that works very much through the bodily strain of night work itself. Monika.
The next main theme is body and labor market and extra pay as motivator or trap. So they say that basically for all of them, the main motivator is the extra pay that is slightly above the legal minimum for extra pay for night work. So Walter, for example, says no one does it voluntarily and happily. We all need the money. And Andy, the only and great advantage is the money. However, as we just heard from Christian, it gets, and Leo also says that the older you get, the worse nights get. So it is kind of accumulation of health impacts over time. But then at some point, you have created a life with expenses, and you cannot do it without the extra pay any longer. So Rico tells us, you're forced to do this. A person builds up his life around certain things, and then you need a good salary, or you would have to say goodbye to half of these things. But well, in the meantime, I'm close to doing that. Labor market considerations were kind of musings around their chances on the labor market. And we have two exemplary statements where Susan, for example, says, you just have to work the nights too. That is how production work is. It is low-skilled work and they can replace you easily, so you are not worth that much. Or Dragica, who says, I have no other choice. I am in my mid-50s now, so if I would look now for something else with normal working times, it is too late for me. So this sense of being stuck in night work. And then we have the tensions and exit fantasies. We have tensions around health versus money. And we found two different rationales. The first is the either or rationale. So they weigh either the money or the health as more important from their current perspective. So Leo, for example, says, even though I know it's bad for your body, you don't want to lose the standard of income. The other rationale is that a lot of our interviewees said, if this or that happens, I would stop. Or once this happens, I would stop. Two statements here. For example, Leo says, if it gets worse, then you have to stop. Or I think it's unattractive for me to do the night shift once I'm older, or once my kids get older, or once I paid off the house. And Christian.
Okay, thank you. I'll let's sort of go towards the finish. To summarize sort of the basic engagement between the workers and the organizations, it was very clear that the workers faced a complex set of problems, which was dynamic, evolving over time. On the one hand, on the other hand, the organization was very much offering just one thing, basically, money. So there was always monetary compensation in the form of the monthly wages with the night shift premium, which was the other side of the deal. Now, this is problematic because, as we've seen in our findings, this challenges a lot of these normative management theory assumptions. The body cannot be sold at will because the body enforced its own limitations. It cannot be separated from the mind at will, as Taylor would have it, because these things are intimately connected. It can also not be optimized as well as the neoliberal dream would have it, because again, the body and the mind were deeply intertwined, and that had also very strong temporal and spatial facets, which also made these artificial breaks impossible to realize in practice. Okay.
We also found that there is different sets of temporalities. The temporality of the material body, which is at odds with how work is organized and compensated financially. So we saw that bodily impacts happen a lot outside of work and accumulate over time. However, the compensation, financial compensation, is a short-term temporality. It's on a monthly basis, right? Which does not in any way correlate to this cumulative long-term impacts that even involve cancer, lower life expectancy, and other things that are negative implications of night work. So through our Barad-inspired perspective on bodies of work as entanglement of material, temporal, spatial, and social dimensions, we want to extend the discourse-focused approaches in organization studies to understand the body at work. So that was our presentation, and I stop share my screen. I hope we could, in this short amount of time, give you a good impression of what we are doing in the study. We would really love any comments, helpful, I don't know, hints at literature or what we could do to improve the paper. So yeah, thanks and goodbye.
Thanks and goodbye as well.
Okay.